There we go. So hi, everyone. We're here tonight for this amazing panel, which is part of our new Get Success Savvy panel series that we kicked off last month. And for tonight, this month in June, we're talking about building your own female advisory board, your FAB, because we know financial knowledge is power. It takes, as we've heard, it takes a community to build this, and that community can be female to female, helping each other out and building that ultimately is how we change society and move forward with all the conversations everyone is having, from the income gap to diversity and helping women grow financially. Our panel tonight, as I said, is part of a new series that we are kicking off for 2022, where we are reaching in to our financial leadership and our leaders that are offering their expertise, their wisdom, their tips with us tonight on amazing new topics that we're hearing, that are the buzz that we're hearing from our clients on the helpline, as well as our professionals that are coming to tell us these are topics that are really worth talking about. I am really thrilled to introduce Suzanne Siracuse tonight as our panel moderator. Suzanne has an amazing bio. First and foremost, she is a Savvy Ladies board member. She has been an amazing supporter of Savvy Ladies. She is now heading up her own consulting firm. She's an expert in the industry of financial services, and she has moderated many, many panels. She is lending her time to us tonight to talk to us about the FAB and what that means to her. But she is a busy woman, and she has many panels coming up on the horizon. So Suzanne, without further ado, I'm going to send it over to you to introduce our panelists for this evening.
Wonderful. Well, good evening and hi, everyone. Thanks, Judy. I'm really excited to facilitate this evening's webinar discussion. And I love this topic, the power of your own FAB, your female advisory board. And just like most companies have a group of people that serve as advisory board members, like that, with that role is to help provide guidance and recommendations and insights on a variety of key topics in order to ultimately produce better results for the firm, right? So why shouldn't we apply that same strategy to ourselves as women in the workforce? And while there's a wide range of career resources available from a professional standpoint, the most impactful advice I have found, at least, is getting advice from others who have literally stood in your shoes. And today, our panelists and I are going to talk through a lot of that. And we're going to listen to some amazing panelists, right? And we're going to talk specifically on key criteria for selecting your personal advisory board, how, when, and why to engage with the advisory board. And throughout all of these discussions, we're going to talk about like real life examples of how we all have used our own FABs during our career, and to talk about like career advancement techniques and addressing difficult situations at work, salary negotiations, and much more. And I'm so excited to be joined by three powerhouse women. First up, I'm going to introduce Kate Healy. Kate is a financial services marketing legend and NextGen advocate, and is currently serving as the board chair for the Foundation for Financial Planning. She's also on the boards of the Invest in Others Charitable Foundation and Diversitas. She's a founding member of the CFP Board's Women Initiative Council, the Center for Financial Planning's Advisory Council, and the Center for Diversity, the Center's Diversity Advisory Board. She was formerly managing director for TD Ameritrade Institutional, leading their marketing and Generation Next divisions. And that's actually how I met Kate. So welcome, Kate. Next up, we have Shaakira Mason-Holloway. She is the executive director and market director of wealth for JP Morgan Wealth Management. And Shaakira is a proud wife and mother and has over 25 years of experience in financial services. And that includes her leveraging, and this is so important, I think, I love that you have this in your bio, transferable skills to move across several lines of businesses within the banking sector, including retail, business, commercial, and now most recently, wealth management. She is passionate about legacy wealth creation and helping others in terms of career progression and finding their voice. She's intentional about her fab because without it, she could not be the best version of herself. Amen. And I agree. So thank you. That's like such a fun bio to read too. And finally, Noreen Beaman. Noreen is the vice chair of the Orion Advisor Solutions Board and chair of the Destinations Mutual Funds Board. After the merger between Orion and Brinker Capital, she served as president of Orion Advisor Solutions. And prior to that, she served as CEO of Brinker Capital, where she helped advisors and their clients build better outcomes for over 30 years. As an industry leader, Noreen is passionate about supporting culture and diversity in the workplace, and she's on the executive committee of the Money Management Institute and is a mentor for the Money Management Institute's Leadership Pathway, which I love this concept, by the way, connects members of the NextGen within the industry with industry veterans to further enhance the mentees' knowledge and insights surrounding the investment advisory industry. So, oh my gosh, welcome ladies. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and sharing your knowledge. So let's start off with learning a bit about how and why each of you created your own female advisory board. And, you know, throughout your answers, please incorporate real life examples. I know I personally learn more from stories than anything. So question one, if you had to choose one or two adjectives to define what your financial advisory board, female advisory board is to you, what would you say? So Shaakira, I would love to start with you on this.
So just 2 words? This one's gonna be hard.
I know, this is what I'm limiting. I know, I'm limiting this, but we're gonna have a lot, we're gonna go on a lot. So, but if you had to identify 2 words that represented what your female advisory board meant to you.
It means to me, the best version of me. I know I went over 2 words.
That's okay.
But it's the best version of me because they give me the transparency, the brutal honesty, and the proper placement that I need, even when I don't know that I need it.
Love it. That's great. Kate, how about you? You can go over 2 words. You can have like a couple of sentences.
Oh no. Well, similar to Shaakira, it's necessary. I don't think I knew how necessary it was, but as I've gotten further in my career, it's necessary. These are the folks that lift you up, that pull you aside, that maybe slap you around a little bit, but it is the only way that I know to grow when I think about it, and I'll tell a story later, but it's the only way I know to help empower myself. So it's necessary and empowering to me.
Wow, that's powerful what you just said, right? It's empowering, allows you to empower yourself. Love that. And we're going to talk a lot about that. And Noreen, how about you?
So, you know, I was thinking, I looked at it a little different, like safe. I feel like it's a safe space, provides me that safe space to be my authentic self. Like sometimes when we're all a little competitive in different kind of working environments, so you need that safe space to try out ideas, and fun. Because if you don't laugh at yourself, and laugh together around that. So I would look at it as it's enjoyable and fun.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love that you each came about it a little bit differently. I wrote down a few adjectives as I was thinking about it myself. And the first was honest, direct, right? Because they're kind of the same for me. Empathetic and supportive, and forward thinking. But I think I need to add some of the adjectives that you ladies have supplied because they're spot on. So thanks for sharing that to kind of set the stage of really kind of your why behind your female advisory board. So I'd like to also ask, was there like a catalyst that made you say, I need a female advisory board? Like, what actually was that first indication or that first thing that happened that said, I'm going to actually be intentional about my putting together a female advisory board? So Noreen, why don't we start with you on that one?
So, I'm one of 4 girls. I'm the oldest. So I've like grown up with the female advisory board. And so, we're all a year apart. So having that group that holds you accountable and doesn't take any of your nonsense, and no one can mess with you, right? They can mess with you, but no one else can. So having my sisters were just so important. And then I'm going to tell a little story about Suzanne. Gosh, this may be 7 years ago. Suzanne came down, we were talking. She's like, why don't I know you? What are you doing?
Oh, Suzanne.
You should be putting yourself in. This is ridiculous. Why aren't you? Because naturally I wasn't a person who liked to be in the spotlight, not something that I'm really putting myself there. I love the business. I love working with, but I wasn't promoting the brand in the way I needed to. What does your fab do? They call you out on that and provided also then gave me the confidence and a way to do that. So I think that it's just, that's when I started being a little more intentional about building a network in a way that I needed to, because just being insular was not really helpful to the business and to the people we served. It wasn't, and then for myself, selfishly, just like those 3 parties, but really it was better. And so thank you for giving me that confidence, Suzanne. I have to give you
Well, I did not know you were going to say that. And that I remember that like it was yesterday. And because at the time I was the publisher of Investment News, and Noreen was CEO of a major financial services firm that did business with us. And I was like, how do I not know you? And sometimes, and I meant that more about like me, but also how did I not know her? How come you weren't in the news more? How come we weren't on more panels? All of that. So I'm glad that helped. And you do need someone sometimes to make that statement to you in order for you to move to that next like level or make that a priority for you and your career. So I also love that you said your female advisory board provides accountability, because I think that's also a really important part. So Kate, how about you? Was there a catalyst that happened, and does it involve me? No, I'm looking at
Everything involves this was the job prior to, we knew each other a little bit at this role, but I was working at a major insurance firm, unnamed, but I went to my boss and I ran marketing, but I actually reported to sales. And I said to my boss, I feel like I need a mentor. I'm struggling here. I was really struggling. And I said, I feel like I need a woman in this company to talk to, but I don't know of any. And he's like, oh, I'll find, yeah. You need a mentor, I'll find you one. And he came back a week later. He's like, there's no one here for you. And I was like, kind of taken aback to 2 things. One, I was like, well, it's proving the point that maybe this isn't the place for me, but also that, you know what, this isn't on my boss. This is on me. I need to find my own. I cannot rely on someone else to say to me, here's someone that's going to help you in your career. And that's when I finally said, and I talk about this a lot, but your career is you, Inc. Like, I'm the only person responsible for my career. So I have to figure out how I'm going to find the people that are going to help me. And so that's what got me to starting. And I started with some, colleagues that I'd known at other jobs, but then I really, as I grew into it, it was like, I need to find the people that are further ahead of me, because I many people don't know this, me as a marketer, but I actually started out in finance and accounting. And so breaking into the marketing world was weird to me, and everyone thought I was weird because I was a numbers person. So I needed to find people that would take me into that world. And so it just became imperative to me that I realized that no one else was going to do this for me. I had to do this.
And your firm wasn't going to help you, it sounded like.
Not one bit.
I mean, that's, I think, a really important piece, right? Like, I think now some firms are, understand the importance of this, especially for women, to have mentors and supporters in their organization. But, if your firm isn't going to do it, and I actually think that even if they do, you should do your own as well.
100.
That's a great example of, don't rely on someone to do it for you.
Yeah.
Get it done yourself. I love that. And Shaakira, how about you? What was your catalyst in forming your own female advisory board?
So early in my career, I headed up a business resource group for Black employees. And I felt like all the time I'm sorry, see, this is a fab thing. My son and my husband's coming in. I'm on a Zoom, guys.
This is real life. I love it.
This is real life. We're here. And so I would always see men. And not only would I be the only female in the room, but they would always have sidebar conversations. And I wasn't in the sidebar conversation because I wasn't in the circle. And I said, you know what? I need my own circle. I didn't know to call it a fab then, but I knew that I needed some support of people who were female, who I could be my authentic self with, and I could have more of a conversation than just football or any sport, but we can talk about things that I truly, truly like outside of that and get to know each other and have a relationship that was more than just work. Because I think that it always became an issue with being a female. When we would assert ourselves and talk about our strengths, we were too aggressive. But then my male counterparts, they were owning their career. And so I needed to figure out how to break that mode and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so I found me a group, and we still rock until this day.
I love it. And in fact, you called it like they're like your sisters, right?
Yes.
And how important that is to kind of like find your people, right? And to find people that you like. That's why I asked in the beginning, what do you define as your female advisory board? What does that mean to you? And I think for everyone that's listening, I would ask you to answer that question yourself, right? What does it mean to you? Because it's going to mean different things to everyone. And that may actually be helpful when you seek out or you decide who you want to have as part of your female advisory board. So speaking of that, I want to talk about so how do you do all of this, right? I think it's pretty apparent the need for it and why it's important and what it can do for you, but actually, how do you choose the members, right? Is there a certain role for them to play on this female advisory board? And, Kate, you wrote a fabulous column in wealthmanagement.com, I think it was not too long ago, on where you kind of created personas of the type of characteristics someone may want on their advisory board to play. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny, the timing of all of this just came around together. In February, I write a monthly column for wealth management for the next generation, for younger advisors. And so I was talking to them, I'd been talking to them about their own personal branding and things like that. And so I wrote a column about building their own personal board of directors to help them grow and hold them accountable. It's that accountability word again, right? And so one of the things I was giving them was examples, because I look sometimes to my board to fill in gaps in either my confidence or my knowledge, or to give me that push, or to do things that I'm just not good at. So one of the things that I was talking about is, say you're moving to a new area, and you always know that person who knows everyone, Suzanne, who you can literally just say, hey, I'm going to be at, and they'll just give you a list of people that you need to know, right? So you might want to look for that connector, that person who may be a better networker than you to initially, I don't know that many of us do. I hate networking, right? I mean, it's a necessary evil, and I have fun doing it. But when I first walk into that room, I'm so uncomfortable. And I'm at a conference right now where I don't know a lot of people, which is weird. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just, it's painful, but I know that you have to do that. But finding someone that can help you do that. One of the things that I love to find is someone who's a futurist, right? Someone who's really helping me think, what is this business going to look like? Or the world doesn't have to just be about your business. It can be about your life. What's it going to be like in 5, 10, or 20 years? And what do you need to start thinking about now to get there? Do you need to go back to school? Do you need to pivot and change careers? Are you done? Did you, time to move on? What what should your future self look like? And how can someone help, maybe role play that with you? And then what I love to do, this is my favorite one, is kind of the rising star. So looking at someone who's younger than me, and I look at them and I'm like, oh my God, if I knew what they know now when I was their age, I'd be whatever. And so like really just reaching out to people who are, whether it's younger or in an adjacent career or just, not at the level that I'm at, but I look at them and I think, oh my God, they're going to take this world by storm. I need to hang out with them and I need to learn from them and just, have a relationship with them. So those are like some different kinds of opportunities. There's a ton of them. And you could think about, what are you looking for, in your own life or in your career? What do you want to add to that? But then, to Noreen's point, it's got to be fun too, right? These have to be people that you are willing to share your soul with, get comfortable with, have them tell you like it is, and learn. But I mean, honestly, if you can't have fun with your personal, with your fab, what's the point?
Yeah, agreed. I love, finding people that have like, maybe they're known for different things, or, that there are areas that you want to work on or that you really value their opinion. But it should be fun, as Noreen said. And you also need to, they also need to, be able to trust them, like really trust them. Because a lot of the stuff that you talk about on this female advisory board is some serious stuff at times. And so that trust factor, I think, is really, really critical, and being honest, even when it's hard to be honest with somebody. So Shaakira, what about you? What are some of the type of roles that you would advise those that are listening to think about when they start to put together their female advisory board, and what did you look for?
First, I'd like to say, don't overthink it. You probably already have one. Just don't know what to call it. But you think about who's going to tell you the truth no matter how it feels. Who's going to lift you up when you don't even know you're falling down? Who's going to support you in a way that, not to coddle you and not to make everything what you say is right, or if there's an issue at work, for example, and you reach out to them, they're not going to get on your soapbox, but they're going to challenge you to think differently than what you think. So for me, just a quick story, I have members of my fab. One is on right now, Miss Sun. Yay! I'm sorry, but at work, and we work at JP Morgan together, and she's in a much higher position than me. And just to be totally transparent with you ladies, she was asked to be on this panel. And she wanted to make sure that she noticed the talent that I had in doing these things. So she wanted to give me an opportunity to do more of them. And so a fab is not just a person that gives you conversation. A fab member is a person that, if they have the opportunity to help grow and stretch you, they're going to make sure to put your name in that hat. And the other spectrum of it is, I have my professional, which is part of that group, and the personal. It's your best friend or your cousin or a sister or someone that's known you for so long. They know when it was really you, when you want them to believe it was everybody else. They know you enough to know the part you played in something. That to me is of a tremendous value, because they don't have to be in your industry. They don't have to understand what you do professionally to a T. They just have to understand relationships. And they have to have a relationship with you strong enough to give you the truth. And then you guys can go out and have cocktails like nothing ever happened.
I love that. It's interesting because, as we're talking, I personally, all of the people that are on my female advisory board, I met through business. They've become personal friends, but it's all started out from a business perspective. So I need to maybe rethink that and maybe add someone that knew me, in high school or something, or college, right?
Absolutely. Because then it's like, they are a bit removed enough from the situation professionally that they can push you to have a different purview of the situation.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're in the same industry or the same profession, you kind of see it from that profession perspective. And when you're totally out of it, it's just very black and white. Like, well, why don't you just pivot this way?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't think of that. And most people in the profession didn't think of that.
Yeah. It's also interesting too, perspective of the way that somebody sees you that's not in the industry, but knows a little bit about what you do. So that's great advice. Noreen, what about you?
Well, you know what's interesting, and I would concur with what was said so far. But one thing that I think is interesting about an advisory board versus people you're networking is it's a two-way street a little bit, right? So the best advisory boards are where you're giving a little bit too. So yikes! Are you getting feedback?
Are you getting feedback?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You weren't
Sorry.
getting it before,
We're getting
right?
it before.
No.
Okay.
I'm so impactful. I'm in stereo.
I know
right?
you're in stereo.
Yeah.
It sounds okay now.
All right, so cool. But I think it's a give and take, right? So it's just that, and there are people that are enjoying being around. And I also agree with people outside of your normal circle. So I've had different women in different parts of the ecosystem of the different types of jobs that are super helpful in terms of thinking about things more globally, that I might think of a little more tunnel vision. So I do think that provides a lot of value. And then I almost feel like I have a few concurrent circles, like different places where, so, whether some of it crosses over and some of it doesn't. Because some of my needs, especially in the role I had before and the roles I'm looking at now, weren't just as specific. So I needed to kind of broaden those out. And then you have your, like you said, your ride or die gals. And that's a fun place to have that. But I do think you need the network that maybe is not on your advisory board. That's why I totally agree with you. Like, you do not overthink this, because you want to reach out broader, but they don't need to be on your advisory board, because
Right.
you don't have enough time in your life to have that many people, but you need them at different points in your life, right? So,
Right.
but they're the ones who'll make that introduction. Hey,
Yeah,
I think your interest is there.
I think that's a really, I'm glad that you segued there, because before everybody joined, I was saying how, so Noreen just had lunch with a woman named Lori Hardwick and today, and I'm seeing her tomorrow. And Lori she probably doesn't even know this, but she's on my fab. And it was partially because when I became a consultant, she had also become a consultant about a year before, and leaving a big firm, leaving a big job. I did the same. And her advice was so spot on and so giving and genuine and helpful, that I was like, this is something that where it's actual specific advice that I was looking for and wanted to, and then all of a sudden it became a back and forth discussion once a month or so about various things that each one of us were considering or doing. So sometimes it has to do with a very specific situation at that time. Some it's like, a more, ride or die, people that have known you forever. So I think, again, just letting things happen based on where you are in your set of circumstances. So Noreen, how many members do you recommend having on your board at any one time?
I think having more than 4 is probably, 4 or 5. Like for me, that's about as much as I can. I find that as much as I can give and take, like, cause I don't want it just to be all about me, Some days I do, but it's not really, you're not gonna have a really great group of people that are that interested in what you have to say forever and ever. So I feel like 4 or 5 that I can make a commitment to. And then I'll mix that up, like I said, with the different circles of people that I might see quarterly or but may not be in that set group. I would say that Cheryl Nash, Lori Hardwick, and I have an interesting bond because we've known each other for so long. And Cheryl, I've known since 1997 when we were coming off of onto APL, which is a trading system. She was a project manager. And what a great person to have on your board. When I had to tell her we were leaving them and going to another competitor, we're still friends. And that's true. And she was to see I had to make that phone call. Who wants to make that phone call? But and then Lori later on, when she had just started at Pershing, we became friends. And so I think the reality is that, and then being there for each other at different points, and they both had transitions and just kind of helping you navigate. I think that's the one thing, and I think we've talked about this too, is that our male counterparts naturally call in their resources and think nothing of it. And I don't think we, and this is really broad brush, but I know myself, I didn't realize how important it was to be able to call in my resources so I'm not on the back of the turnip truck, because that's real. I mean, and I've been on the back of the turnip truck more than I like to admit, but so having your resources, then at least you're prepared when you walk in the door, things that you should be thinking about. So I have found, again, raise your hand, grab that information and take advantage. And that's what your advisory board should be able to do for you.
Yeah, great. And we're going to talk a little bit about our why female versus male, and you can have both, but we're going to specifically talk about the why having female advisory board is so critical. So Shaakira and Kate, do you agree? I do actually. I think 4 or 5 is the perfect amount. Are you guys in line with that?
I am in alignment with that. And I think there's also flexibility in that fab just may change. I'm a firm believer that even spiritually, you will be placed in a room, or you may meet someone you've never met before, who, not that the member is no good to you anymore, they still may have a relationship with you in your life, but that position has been replaced by someone new. And that's not a bad thing, because as you evolve, your circle will evolve. And so we just have to be flexible in that and not get stuck to the number and know that it's going to continue to grow. Like, I've met a couple of fabs right now on here in my chat that I love to grow relationships with. Never met them before a day in my life, but today I'm here with purpose, on purpose.
Yes. Oh God, I love that.
Love that. Yeah, I agree with the number. I mean, 3 to 5 is kind of, the most, I'm an introvert. So big crowds are kind of like, I can't handle all those conversations. I got to process what someone's saying. So, I prefer that 3 kind of, plus me is 4. But I love, what you said, Noreen, about having those people to back you up. Suzanne, I remember having a conversation with you once about like that secret handshake that we felt like men had sometimes. Like there was a club that we just never knew what we needed to join. And I think this is a big part of it, right? They didn't even think about calling up a golf buddy or someone that they worked with 2 jobs ago to say, hey, this is what's happening. This is stupid, right? What should I do or whatever? And I know earlier in my career, I didn't rely on the power of the women that I worked with long enough. And a whole nother topic is because a lot of them left this industry, but that's a whole nother topic we won't get into. But I don't think I realized then that I needed to continue to grow within the industry and get more people and really be intentional about building this. But yeah, 3 to 5 is my top.
Yeah, great. Couldn't agree more. So is it, we've talked a little bit about being intentional about your board. Is it a formal board, an informal board? Is it a combination of organic and intentional? Sometimes it's just to your point, Shaakira, like it's where you are. It's like kind of fate that you are meant to be joined with somebody. But how's that, Kate? How's that worked for you with your board? Is it formal? Is it?
It's like all of the above, right? There's to it, and it's like, as I'm going through a time of transition right now, there are people like Shaakira talked about that have been added to the board that I didn't think about prior to this, that are so it's growing a little bit. But I would say it's been for me more organic growth, but as I've become much more intentional about it than I was in the past. I think in the past I was just like, oh, I have this group of folks, we go out to dinner once in a while, and we sit, we talk, and we take turns going around through everyone's issues. And now I seek out the conversation to say, all right, here's what's, here's what I'm going through, or what are you going through? Let's start to think about the pros and the cons and those kinds of things in a much more intentional way than I did in the past. And some of that is just a result of I am in transition, so I need much more help than maybe I thought I did before. Probably needed the help before too, just didn't always get it as much or ask for it as much. But I think it's just a combination of where you are, right? Sometimes it's going to be formal, sometimes it's just going to be someone informal that you meet once at a conference, and you may follow up with them once in 6 months and never talk again, but they gave you something that sparked something in you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I remember earlier in my career, I feel like I had an advisory board, and it was mostly women, I would say, but it was very focused on career growth and getting me to the next level. That was very much about what I was used to this kind of a board for. It became a very, very different thing when I was leaving the career that I had at Investment News for 20 something years and embarking on a completely different thing. Was still in the same industry, but it was a different business. And I felt like I needed a lot of advice, support, guidance. And then now, as I've had the business for 3 years, I use it for something completely different. So I think that it does depend on the situation. Noreen, what about you? Do you have a formal board setup?
It would be more, I would say, a little more informal. I find that has worked better. As I also moved up in the role of my company, so now I'm the CEO, I had less people around me within the organization to share with, right? So that's where, so when I looked at that advisory board, it was looking for, whether things about culture, how am I bringing the team along, right, challenging myself, am I doing enough for diversity, like all those things that you're struggling with in doing your role in your organization. Having that team of different experts that they were feeling in their businesses was helpful, because all of a sudden there's things in any of your roles that you cannot be that vulnerable within a place with your company, like it was a little bit harder. Not to say you should be vulnerable as a leader, but it was like I needed to like really hash it out. And I process by talking. And so having this group around me that's willing to listen as I'm talking my nonsense was very helpful, right? Like, so, but then you have to be a good listener on the other side. Again, I always think this is a two-way street. So I would say it's a little more informal, but just like Kate, I'm in transition as well, as I'm thinking I've stepped off of my daily operating role. So now this board is different. Is it more that I want to do? What do I want to do next to be impactful? Also in this transition, I have a woman transition coach. So I've hired an actual professional, part of my network. But the difference is I take the information as we're talking and bring that back to my advisory board. So as a validation process of having someone help me think about what does my next step look like, and how can I be impactful? So I would find, and it's a female who's done coaching and different things post her very successful career. So it's kind of interesting to have those perspectives, but I would say a little more informal, but probably getting together with the different groups about at least, every once a month and maybe in person quarterly, like, so those kinds of things. But it's been fun. And fun, that's my key word.
What was your key word?
Fun.
Oh yeah, I love it. That's true. I mean, that's actually a really, really important point that I never thought about, but that it's got to be. Shaakira, what about you? Is yours formal, informal?
It's a bit of both. It's informal to the point that if there's a fire drill and I got to make a call and I have to go and talk through something, I can do that. It's formal, whereas we have our touch bases once a month. And it's more of a go around the horn and not just talk about things and situations that's going on, but affirm each other. Mm-hmm. My thing is making sure that you always feel and know that you're more than enough. Nobody's perfect. We're imperfectly perfect, but making sure we understand that we're more than enough. So that when things do come our way that maybe not go the way that we think it should go, or there's an issue or whatever, you can stand on solid ground, fertile ground, when you're more than enough. And so you can always build from that. And I think with every situation for our Fab group, I'm the positive Betty. I'm going to find a way that we're going to find a positive. You can spin anything, right? You can choose how, when something happens, how it's going to affect you in the next decision you're going to make. You can choose to sulk about it. You can choose to be angry about it, or you can choose to how to make it work for your benefit. There's always a way. And so that to me is the most important part of it, because it's not going to always be roses. And you have to know who your formal people are and stay on that formal process. And your informal times where it's 911, I am about to choke somebody. I need a minute, right? You need to be able to do that, right? And they need to be a safe place to do that and get you back in your place of peace and being more than enough.
So what you just talked about is an example that just happened to me. It wasn't me doing the 911. It was someone who I'm on their female advisory board. And she's super smart, super high level job, like always under control, like just really like good, like she needs advice. But this was the first time where she called me and she was panicked about a situation that was going on at work. And she was getting paranoid. She was almost, it was almost not logical, which is not her, right? But she was, this had stirred her up so much. And I literally was on the phone with her for 45 minutes, like, so, you know, almost just reasoning her, talking her off the ledge. And like, I'm not saying like I gave such great advice. It was more about she utilized someone that she knew at that time, like she needed to call one of her advisory board members because she was in such a dark place. And what she was, if she would have gone through with what she was going to do, it could have been a huge career mistake. And so knowing that like one of those roles that we talked about earlier is that who's that 911 call to when you're feeling panicked, and we've all been there, right? If you're listening, like we've all been there. Who is that call to? And, you know, having them kind of calm you down to see reason. And like the next day she called me and I was like, how did it go? And she's like, you know, oh my God, like I was conjuring up all of these crazy thoughts in my head. And it wasn't even anything about that. And I was like, my God, you know, thank God you didn't go in there like, you know, the way that she was going to. So that's just like a real example of something that happened to me recently. And again, it's not like I said anything that earth shattering. It was more just needing to talk to someone and talk it out.
And you know, Suzanne, what you said in your story, the untold part. Women, I don't care who we are, we have emotions. And there could be something that happens. And when we think, why female? I can talk to my husband about something. And I could be like, you don't understand. No, this is what happened, right? I'm very emotional, right? And he's sitting there like this. Like, why? Okay. So, but when we have our female advisory board, our emotion is then defined as passion. And then we're able to channel that for one another because we can balance each other. So your female advisory board member that called you emotional, you were able to be her calm. And I hate to say it, but had she called a man, he would be like, you know, that just makes no sense. I don't understand why you're so upset. You're overthinking it. You know, like they
Yes.
just can't hit those buttons because they don't have them.
Yep, absolutely. And in fact, that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask you guys, which is, You know, we've had fabulous male allies in our lives. They're an important part. I have, you know, male advisory board members, meaning like I seek advice from certain people over my career that have been male, but there's something special about your female advisory board members, and that can identify a lot more with a lot of different things that we all have gone through as women in the workforce, as mothers that are balancing career and families, all of those things. So what makes having a female advisory board? So you just started on it, Shaakira, if you want to keep on that thread of, obviously, to have that empathy, the emotion, the understanding. Summer, is there anything else that you think is really critical that your female board members bring to the table that maybe you couldn't get from a male advisory board member?
All right, guys. So I'm not giving you a disclosure. I'm going to give it to you straight. As women, we can multitask with one eye closed, one tie behind our back, more than men. We just do. And so we also like to get things done so much that sometimes we take on too much. And we understand that about each other. We understand that we have to do and perform 2 to 3 times better than our male counterparts sometimes to get in the room. And if you've not been in that situation as a female to get in the room, not to mention stay in the room, how can you understand what we're going through? You just can't.
Yep.
And on top of that, for us wives with children and even single moms or whatever situation you may be in, it's different when mommy misses the game. It's different when your child is sick and mommy is not at home, right? It's almost like an unwritten rule that daddy has to work. They get it, the kids get it. But when mommy has to make those tough decisions, and sometimes we're at a conference or whatever, there's been times that I've went behind closed doors and had to cry because I felt guilty for putting my career in that first place for that moment. So I think as other women, we can support that because we've probably been there. And men, it's not the same for them. They just look at as Superman, the provider for their family.
Yeah. And if I want to keep on this for a second, then I want Kate and Noreen to weigh in, but you know, what about being a Black woman? How important is it to have other women of color on your female advisory board?
It's not just important, it's a necessity. Because when I speak about the only in the room, we may think the only at the boardroom table. For me, throughout my career, I've been the only in the room of thousands in financial services, especially in wealth management from a leader perspective. I was just in a conference this past October, and out of 3,700 people, there were 7 African-American people. There were 2 women. One of them was me. And so you have to have some place to feel safe. You have to have a place spiritually to put your war clothes on, a village to pray with you and pray for you, a village that will tell you, you have to be your authentic self. No, my hair is not always going to be straight. No, yes, I got big hips and this is just the way I am. And this is my brown skin and you're more than enough. And you can put that suit on and hold your head up high and walk in there and be you and be loved and supported as you. And on the flip side, those that don't, shame on them because they're missing out on you. And so that is extremely important. And it's also important to understand that even with the diversity, equity, and inclusion, that all the talk, all the training, everything that's happening around the globe, there's a pocket of that diversity that focuses on the difference. And there has to be a paradigm shift to focus on the I of inclusion. Because I can guarantee you, if I asked a group, no matter what race, if they were between 40 and 50, are they part of a sandwich? Meaning their parents are getting older, their children are still young, and they got to figure it out. More of us would agree than disagree. So I think we're getting too far, and I'm sorry to be sidebar, but this is very important to me, but we're getting too far into the weeds of how we're different, that we're taking diversity, turning it into difference, turning it into division, when we need to take inclusion and treat each individual as a person and include everybody so that you can learn more about what's at stake, because we won't move this needle without everybody. So
I think I'm so glad that you shared that. And I know it's off topic, but not really, quite frankly. That's a really important way to look at it. And if we all think that you're one of our female advisory board members right now, you've just educated a lot of people on maybe a different way to approach DEI and B within their firms and their lives. So thank you for that. I think that was really well said and an important point.
thank you, Suzanne.
I do. I love that. In fact, I'm working on an executive brief, and I want to include that. And I'll give you props. Don't worry.
Thank you.
So, because I think that that's a really important distinction. So, Kate, what about you? Why female? Why is that so important? And why is it so different and special?
So just to build on what Shaakira said, right? I mean, it is just different. We all know that. We are treated differently. We see things differently. And quite frankly, you know, it's hard. It's hard to be the one or the one that's been, you know, feel like you're fighting this battle for years. And so having a group of females that you can have fun with, but you can let your hair down with and just commiserate. And you know, I'm always looking forward. It's not about bitching and moaning and complaining. It's some people live in a different bubble than other people, and you need someone that understands your bubble and you can just relax. Like when I'm having dinner with my fab or, you know, a group of women, like I just feel so different. I mean, I could be dressed the same. I could still be in a suit and heels and all of that, but I am just relaxed. I don't feel like I have to put on airs or worry about how that's being taken or what, you know. We just had at this conference I'm at, you know, a woman executive speak, and she's like, I could see them, you know, making eyes, like rolling their eyes when I spoke. Like, it's just, you know, because they just think differently, like, oh, there she goes again. Well, and, you know, and sometimes it's like, well, yeah, well, sometimes she is going, and that's it. I just think it's just very important to have a group of women that you can be strong with. Like Noreen, I have 3 sisters. They you know, they look at me differently. They're in totally different careers. They think I'm the weirdest person in the world for being in this business, but they can pull it aside and you know, but they knew me when, and they know, coming at it from a girl. They're all moms. Between them, I don't know, they have like 100 kids, and it's just a different way of looking at things and understanding. And there's just nothing, it's hard to explain. I think you just know when you get into that room of people that you just feel your defenses drop, and you just feel like, oh my God, I can just be myself in that suit of armor that I've been wearing for days or weeks or months. I'm just going to put that in the closet right now, and I'm going to talk to these people that are going to help me in a different way. Not that I have so many men that have been phenomenal mentors and sponsors and people that I don't even know are speaking about me when I'm not in the room, but there's just something about a group of women together, seeing that strength and how we support each other. It's just
A community, right? It's a community.
Yeah, it's unmatched.
Noreen, how about you want to close us on this particular topic?
You know, what I think is so exciting about this conversation is that change only happens when you have honest conversations, and unconscious bias is real. Like we can, you know, act like, oh, it's, you know, it's not a thing. And we all, you know, unfortunately, you know, work a little bit harder, have to throw one more elbow. Now she's a hard charging go-getter. I can translate that into bad language for you, but having women around you to have that conversation and about, hey, I want to see the table, but I want to bring other people with me. But it's having that conversation. And I do 100% agree with the I. You know, people are like, why don't I only should have a female financial advisor. That's not necessarily true. You can have a male, if that, you should have the best advisor that works for your family. Like, that's not diversity. That's crazy. Like, now we should have more female financial advisors. I 100% support that. But you as a consumer should pick who works for you and your family, not necessarily because for a diversity play, but that's not inclusion, right? Like, inclusion is how I have a problem and I need someone to help me solve it. And I think that's where a female advisory board creates those conversations that our male counterparts would be like, what are you talking about? Like, you're in charge. I'm like, yeah, I might have been in charge, but you realize how many people on like elbow out and the issues they had because, you know, how many children I had or what I was doing and the sandwich generation, how am I managing all of that? Like, okay, it's not really your business how I'm managing that. That's my side of the street. So, but I think that I've learned, that's why I love that. This has been wonderful. And taking those takeaways, Suzanne, I'll be looking for your article, but really helpful about, as we think about change, and change happens in those moments. So I want to thank you guys for sharing.
Yeah, you know, another story, sorry if I'm sharing too many stories, but another story that I think is a really good example of why it's important to have women sisterhood, as someone wrote in the chat, as part of like a board for you is a few months ago, I was meeting a friend for dinner I've known for 20 odd years in this industry. She's super smart. She's very competitive. She joined a firm and she's transforming it. Right? Transforming it, doing an amazing job, hiring a ton of people, getting processes in place, you know, getting them on the map. And she sat down and she's like, I'm sorry I was late. And she had a board meeting and blah, blah. And she was like rattled. And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, you know, I was just told that I can be a little too aggressive. And I said, was it a male person that said that to you? And she said, yes. And I said, you know, this is the stuff that drives me nuts because I'm sorry. I don't think that this male boss would have said that if it was a guy. I really don't. You hear this a lot when you are a woman that is really smart, a go-getter, or whatever. Sometimes you get labeled aggressive and other words. And again, like we sat there and talked about that. And it was so odd because all I thought about was all of the stuff that she had done in a short period of time and how impressive it was. And yet she came in deflated because one person used a word that made her feel bad about herself. And so again, like those are kind of the other reasons that having women who understand that, who've been called aggressive or bitchy or tough or whatever. And so that would be kind of the closeout of that statement, the importance of why having women in your circle is really critical. So I would like to just really quick, another tactical question. Do you guys meet with your advisory boards individually or as a team, or is it both?
For me, it's both.
Both.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
our
both.
more formal connections are as a group. The more informal connections are one-on-one. And then there's always that gray area where I may call them, they may call me, it's just out of the blue, or we may all hook up at a conference or something like that, but it's both. And I don't know what I would do if I didn't have both.
And Noreen, how about you?
I would agree. And I think both, one of the things and I think Kate, you mentioned it too, the conference, I would encourage those of you that you go to a conference, look at that attendee list, pick a few, grab a drink, grab a coffee. Like that's an easy way to get that cooking without being pressured when everyone's running and juggling. So, and that I've been more intentional about too, like, ooh, who's got, because I'm like, I want to make sure we spend some time together.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's great advice. I mean, I've met so many amazing women through the conference circuit, and I know the last few years have been difficult, but things are getting back up there. And I think it's so easy to just be like, hey, would you grab a coffee? And even if like just through social media, right? If there's someone that you've admired or you've heard speak, or I can tell you that more often than not, a senior woman is more interested at a certain place in their career to help others than to get ahead. So don't be nervous about reaching out, I would say. And then I also want to ask you guys, have you primarily used your board more for proactive, like what I was saying earlier, like a career growth, or reactive? Like, I feel like I'm so in a reactive phase, like anytime there's an issue, like that's when I reach out. But like, can you guys give an example of how you've used it both proactively and reactively?
I can start if you don't mind, Suzanne.
Sure.
So the proactive part for me has always been career development. And early on, when I made the choice that nobody was going to own my future but me, I needed to figure out how to convey transferable skills to department heads who felt that you had to go through a certain track to get to that seat. And my track is all over the place. It has it's not defined in any way, shape, or form the way it should have been, according to these people. And what I would do is I would meet people, and I couldn't call them my fab because I didn't know that that's what they were. But I would take vacation from work to go be a fly on the wall in another line of business. So I would take vacation and go to work.
Wow.
Because I learned early on, you never get a role because you apply for it. By the time you apply, you should already have the role. And so I knew I had to build relationships. So I'd find one person that could get me in, and then I would do that. And so that was very, very much intentional and proactive. I am more proactive than reactive, because if I'm calling to vent, we have a rule. If it's a 30-minute call, we got 5 minutes on the problem, 25 minutes on the solution, or we got to get off my phone, period. Because if you stay too long on a problem, you create more problems within that problem, right?
Yes. Oh my God. You're like a book of Proverbs. You got all these like nuggets of things coming out. We gotta capture this. I know there's
It's funny you say that. My grandmother, when I was younger, she used to make me read the book of Proverbs because she said that was the order of your steps to become a good person. So she would make me read and explain each verse to her and go through it every day, like as a little kid. But I digress. So for you to say that means a lot, because she passed away about 20 years ago. So thank you for saying that, Suzanne.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of you guys have such great stuff to say, but like there's just this poetry almost like that comes out of some of the things that you say, or the way you say it, and that's a skill set.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously, like that's a major skill set.
That's not even a skill set. That's a
gift. Thank you, Kate. Thank you for correcting me. Thank you, female advisory board member.
Uh-oh, you might have sparked something that I need to be working on to foster the gift.
Yes.
Hi, Bar.
So Noreen, what about you? Give me an example of how you are, or how you have used either proactively or reactively that's like really worked out well.
So the reactive has been if there have been situations that I've actually probably been more on the other side of it, where someone wasn't being treated fairly. Call like, all right, let's pull in the network. I have a great employment lawyer. Let's talk about the different clauses. Have you thought about that? Do you have an employment lawyer? Maybe you needed one if you didn't have one before, but you're now in that situation. So from a reactive, those, and I agree with you, they should be short. Like you have to be there when something's happening, but that's not, it's the proactive part about like, what does the future look like? And how are you navigating that? And how are you thinking about wherever you are in your career, whatever you're doing, of thinking about how are you going to do that? So the proactive has been reaching out of like, I tend to start every year with how many things I want to learn, different. And so then I pull in this network to say, okay, can they help me get to that education milestone in my own head about what I wanted to learn this year? So that's where the proactive has come in.
Love it. That's a great example. That's a great example. And Kate, what about you?
Well, I would say proactive, except reactive. I don't know if you just noticed that the electricity went out in my room, so all the power went out. And I was like, oh no, am I going to lose all of this? But I heard the generator kick in, so.
Well, luckily we only have 2 minutes left in the webinar. So like, this is like, it would be perfect timing for you to lose electricity.
But I'm much more proactive. I don't, if it's done, it's done. I'm kind of, it's more, what am I looking for in the future? So when I reach out, it's like, let's figure out what's the next 5 years, 10 years, or what's the path that I need to start to think about to get to where I want to be. And I always look, I ask my fab to help me. To me, it's not the next, it's what's next after next. So in order for me to think what my next is, I have to think through what my next, and then my next is to know what is going to get me to the next. What do I do next? So that's how I try to think about it.
That's great.
That's like great. Very healthy. I have to tell you, I don't know if anybody else on this call is, I go over things in my head a million times. If something happened that I didn't like the way it went down, I will dissect it 5 ways to Sunday. And I do think your female advisory board can keep you in check so that you don't go down that rabbit hole. And I can tell you, I've been there. And I think we probably all have. And so just that, I think going back to something that you had said earlier, Shaakira, about inclusiveness, and stop focusing in on the differences, focusing in on the similarities. The same thing when you're dealing with an issue or something that's not pleasant, maybe focus in on why it's, like the good that's going to come out of it, right? Because more often than not, things happen for a reason. And I think having your female advisory board to keep you in check and to keep you feeling positive and focus on the good stuff, there's something to be said for that. That's a mental health space, right? So I can't believe we are out of time. I have like 5 other questions I didn't get to, but I do want to be cognizant of the time that we have. I know that there's questions that we hopefully can get to, and Savvy Ladies can email out for those that were on the call. We're happy to answer anything, any of the panelists or myself. And then I just want to thank all of you for staying on and listening to I think some really great feedback from our wonderful panel. So, Kate and Shaakira and Noreen, thank you so much. Savvy Ladies, thanks for hosting these amazing educational sessions. And I'll turn it back over to Judy.
And also thank you all so much. It really has been a really educational evening listening to each of you. I personally, took all those nuggets as well. And I loved reading here in the chat, Nikki wrote, while she needed to sign off, thank you for this. It was 100% needed and cup filling. And I think we all agree that you touched our souls. You made us all think a little differently and challenged us with how can we all form a fab that is meaningful for each of us and help to grow each of us those next stages and beyond. So thank you all very, very much. So appreciative. Everyone on the call, Savvy Ladies continues to do panels. We have health and money coming up in July, and then Get Savvy about your career in September. So stay tuned, read your emails, and you'll know exactly what we're doing, and you can sign up and register for the upcoming panels. Again, thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.